Studying for midterms is soul-crushing. Midterm grades are disappointing, but do you know what isn't disappointing? LaSalle Athletics this week. Hello, I'm Siobhan Nolan.
And I'm Tyler Small. Sports happen, followed by more sports occurring, and we rounded out the week with some more sports. You're watching LaSalle TV's home for Explorer Athletics, SportsLine.
Welcome to SportsLine. It's just about time to fully submerge ourselves into the spring season of athletics as one basketball season comes to an end.
And later, we welcome on the newest man bun owner on the east of the Mississippi, Samuel Long, for this week's edition of the Explorer Report.
But first, let's take a look at our SportsLine top 3.
Freshman rookie pitcher Frankie Elisalt was named A-10 Rookie of the Week for men's baseball after a stellar collegiate debut against Hofstra on Friday. The right-handed Florida native racked up 11 strikeouts and took the Explorers' shutout into the 6th inning. The blue and gold hasn't seen this many strikeouts thrown in a single game since Dan Waters threw one in 2006. Elisalt finished out the game allowing just 2 runs and 3 hits over 6 innings pitched in a no-decision effort.
Number 2. Another A-10 Rookie of the Week was granted to freshman forward Junior Nair of the men's soccer team. The honor was granted to him after his stellar performance against Mount St. Mary's on Thursday. Nair tallied his first collegiate goal and assist, overall being a crucial asset to LaSalle's 5-3 win over the Mountaineers. His first goal tied up the match 1-1 in the 9th minute of play. His assist turned out to be the game winner for LaSalle in the 58th minute of play to erase the 2-1 deficit and secure the dub over the Mountaineers. This is now the 3rd straight week the men's soccer team has received A-10 honors.
And number 3, the women's soccer team is ranked 6th in the East region for the inaugural United Soccer's coaches rankings. This is the first time an Explorers has been ranked in the regional since the 2018 season with a perfect record so far. The blue and gold have scored more goals and tallied more points in the 3-game span than ever before after taking down Villanova, Delaware State, and Drexel. Now we have a lot of women's soccer content coming up for you, just debating when Sam Long comes on and how good they've been so far, but it's about time that they not only get the Atlantic 10 recognition, but the national recognition.
Exactly. They've been so good so far, and they were really good last year. It's almost surprising that they didn't get this much recognition last season either. But a perfect start, really dominant performance as well. It's not just the score lines, it's the performances too. It's the way that they're playing, the way that they're getting goals and assists and linking up, especially the freshmen. So, I mean, it's really overdue for the women's soccer team that they're getting this much hype this season.
Absolutely, and just only a couple years before that, winning the Atlantic 10 tournament in 2017. Definitely in their sights for this year, of course. The other one I wanted to go to, Frankie Elisalt, just a phenomenal performance in his first collegiate debut. Just not only with everything going on, being able to shine as a freshman. I mean, the same thing happened a couple days later for Nick Hammer, who had a couple, not as good of a start, of course, had 3 earned runs and less strikeouts, but just being overshined by that, even though Elisalt was just completely dominant, was just huge to see from this young staff.
Exactly, and baseball really did well with their doubleheaders. There was so much scheduling conflicts going on, but they really handled it well. They really played well. They got good results, and just the pitching is always going to be important. The hitting's been doing well too, so baseball's shaping up to have a great season as well.
Yes, and we will get to that and a whole lot more, but that does it for this week's edition of Top 3. Now let's see how our teams did in this week's recaps. The women's basketball team took on Duquesne last week and found themselves down early to start the match. Duquesne jumped out to a 9-5 lead and continued to score while the Explorers couldn't find a basket. After one quarter, the Explorers were down 23-11, but things started to change in the second quarter. LaSalle was starting to find the basket and focus stops on the other end, and by halftime were down 4, courtesy of a 9-1 run they saw that cut into the deficit 32-28. Action picked up coming out of the half, and the Explorers took the first 4 points of the half to tie the ball game, and then they traded baskets for the remainder of the quarter to go into the fourth quarter tied at 49. The Explorers conceded a 6-2 run to start off the fourth quarter and saw them down 4, and the team would go back and forth until LaSalle answered with a run of their own and tied the game at 69. But in the final minutes, Duquesne took over, scoring 5 of the final 6 points, and LaSalle fell to a score of 74-70. Kayla Sproul ended up being the leading scorer for the Explorers, finishing with 24 points and had the team leading 7 rebounds.
Following the loss at Duquesne, the Explorers hosted St. Bonaventure on their senior night, in which we would see the Explorers jump out to an early lead and hold that lead after scoring 10 of the final 17 points in the first, ending the first quarter with an 18-13 lead. In the second, LaSalle was the victim of a quick 5-0 run that eventually saw them trailing for a short margin of the game. After that, LaSalle never surrendered the lead. They answered with an 8-0 run over the next 2 minutes and eventually found themselves up by 5 heading into halftime. Coming out of the break, LaSalle dominated the remainder of the game, quickly starting the half with a 5-0 run, which forced a timeout by St. Bonaventure, and following the break, the Explorers couldn't miss. They scored 12 of the next 18 points and found themselves up by 18 points by the time the quarter ended. The fourth was pure dominance as the Explorers scored 10 of the first 19 points and ended the game with the scoring 11 of the final 17 points. Claire Jacobs was the leading scorer with 20, while Kayla Sproul chipped in 17, and senior Haley Hill led the team with 10 rebounds.
The men's basketball team hosted Duquesne for their senior night, and the Explorers started the game with 2 3-pointers before Duquesne answered with a 13-4 run, and LaSalle found themselves down 15-12 in the first half. Duquesne would expand the lead following a stoppage by the Explorers, but LaSalle would eventually get back into the game by scoring 7 unanswered to take a 23-20 lead after Jameer Brickus went on a 5-0 personal run on his own. The game went back and forth for the remainder of the first half, followed the 5-0 run by the Explorers. Duquesne took the lead back, but the Explorers quickly answered with a dunk by sophomore Jack Clark and a 3-pointer by Christian Ray. Following a 3-pointer for the Explorers conceded, Sharif Kenny scored a layup in the final seconds of the half, and LaSalle went into halftime with a 33-29 lead. When the game resumed, senior David Beatty caught fire, scoring the first 9 points of the half, adding to a 13-0 run, and began the second half with the Explorers up 53-38 with a little over 12 minutes left to play in the game. After the team traded 3-pointers, the game started as both teams couldn't find the basket over the next 3 minutes before LaSalle hit a free throw, giving them a 57-44 lead with 8 minutes left. Over the next 3 minutes, the Explorers dominated the game, hitting 3 threes and getting defensive stops, and found themselves down 17 after that, and the Explorers never looked back. Cutting to the lead was 22 points in the 85-65 victory, and senior David Beatty led the team scoring with 22, tying his career high, and Christian Ray dominated with 14 rebounds.
Following senior night, LaSalle was unable to carry the momentum into their next game against George Mason. The ballgame looked somewhat competitive in the first half until George Mason went on a 16-4 run and jumped to a 21-9 lead halfway through the first half. Junior Jared Kimbrough was able to get the Explorers back within 8 points, but that was the last time LaSalle came close to making it a game. They conceded 11 straight points and found themselves down 47-23 at halftime. Nothing changed in the second half as George Mason started with a 13-5 run, while LaSalle was unable to find the basket, and the deficit eventually got to a point where LaSalle couldn't overcome and fell to George Mason 89-54. Jared Kimbrough led the team in scoring with 21 points, while senior Scott Spencer snagged 5 boards.
Sadly, the men's season came to an end in the past week when they were eliminated in the opening round of the Atlantic 10 tournament. They squared off against their Big Five rival St. Joe's, and it took 4 minutes for LaSalle to realize they'd be fighting for a 12-4 deficit to start the game. They were able to climb back and get within 1 thanks to a 7-0 run. Then St. Joe's responded with a 5-2 run to regain the lead. Sophomore Christian Ray and junior Jared Kimbrough got the Explorers within 2 and eventually their first lead of the game midway through the first half. After trading points, senior David Beatty and Scott Spencer combined for baskets that gave LaSalle the lead going into the half. St. Joe's came out of that half on fire, scoring 8 unanswered points, giving them the lead until the Explorers fought back and the game was tied at 55. With 8 minutes left, David Beatty hit a jumper to give the lead to LaSalle, but the final minutes, the defense couldn't get stops and St. Joe's went on a 9-1 run, giving the lead for good. LaSalle tried to get back into this game with efforts made by Jameer Brickus, but St. Joe's ended up hitting free throws to ice the game and ice the Explorers season until next year. LaSalle fell to St. Joe's 72-66.
Women's soccer continues their perfect start to the 2021 season, recording their 3rd straight win this year against Drexel. The Explorers' lone goal in the match came from a penalty kick taken by senior Jenna Soriano, but they proved that 1 goal was all they needed, shutting out the Dragons with the final result of 1-0. The The blue and gold offense recorded 11 shots, while junior goalie Jillian DeSantis made her collegiate debut, earning her shutout with 6 saves.
3 freshmen got their first collegiate goals during the men's soccer thrilling comeback win over Mount St. Mary's on Thursday. Mount St. Mary's drew first blood, scoring in the 6th minute, but LaSalle quickly responded with freshman junior Nair netting his first collegiate goal to tie things up at 1. A 19th-minute goal put the Mountaineers ahead yet again, but junior Amari Corderell put the Explorers level in the 34th minute of play, leaving the score 2-2 at halftime. A 55th-minute penalty kick from the junior Ike Hollinger gave LaSalle the advantage, and just 3 minutes later, freshman Scott Beeks found the back of the net, putting the score 4-2. The Mount nearly had the deficit in the 74th minute on a penalty kick, but freshman Justin Burnau set the deal with his first collegiate goal as well, and the Explorers came away with a 5-3 win. This is the most goals scored by LaSalle since 2017, thanks to the Explorers outscoring Mount 25-10 with 12 shots on goal.
The women's lacrosse team took down Delaware 7-4 at their season opener on Saturday. Seniors Anna Lakabuchi and Bridget Rusky led the way for the blue and gold, each netting twice and assisting once. An impressive defensive display was a key component to this win after the Explorers allowed no goals in for over 30 minutes of play in the game. Senior Molly Laughlin was a force to be reckoned with in net with 11 saves on 15 shots on goal. Freshman Maddie Henderson tallied her first collegiate goal, putting LaSalle ahead midway through the half. Though being answered back 7 minutes later by the Blue Hens, freshman Lola Quigley also established her first collegiate goal to put LaSalle in the lead again to end the half. With a strong force on all aspects of play, the blue and gold were able to defeat Delaware for the first time since 2013.
The men's baseball team kicked off their season this past Friday, and if you thought Hofstra was the home team, I don't blame you, because they played 4 straight games against the Pride. The first of 4 was all Hofstra, as they got the ace Colin Scanlon in the 3rd inning with an RBI single, but were nabbed at the plate trying to steal home. The 5th inning would get a bit uglier as 2 Explorers errors led to 4 runs. LaSalle would get blanked in this one, losing the first 7-0. The back end of the doubleheader would be a lot closer as the Explorers jumped in front of sophomore Elijah Dickerson, brought senior Jack Cuccinata home on an RBI triple. Graduate student Ryan Guckin finished off the round trip for Dickerson with an RBI double to give LaSalle a 2-0 advantage. The star of the day for the blue and gold would be freshman starter Frank Ellisalt, who fanned 9 of his 11 strikeout victims in the first 5 innings. However, the wheels would fall off at the end as the Pride would score the next 4 unanswered, sweeping the doubleheader with a final of 4-2.
The second doubleheader came on Monday, which started much better for the blue and gold. It did not look so right away, as the first pitch of the game came from Gabe Rappa, who was deposited over the fence for a leadoff shot, and an RBI double in the first gave the Pride the 2-0 advantage. It would go scoreless until the 5th, where Hofstra added the next 3 runs to grow their lead to 5. The Explorers would flip the switch from this point, as they hung a crooked number with 6 runs on 5 hits in the 7th. Cuccinata got an RBI knock, followed by a bases-clearing double by Tatum Levins, and Ryan Guckin brought home 2 to give the Explorers the go-ahead knock, winning 6-5. Game 2 would get out of hand fast for the Explorers, as a 5 spot in the second would lead to Hofstra's ability to coast for the rest of the ballgame, 14-5. Freshman Will Binder, sophomore John DiMucci, Cuccinata, and sophomore Connor Coulahan all had RBI hits in the game.
Lastly, the Explorers actually decided to play another team, welcoming in the Delaware State Hornets. Freshman Nick Hammer got the first collegiate start and got a warm welcome into the business with a bases-clearing triple to give the Hornets a 3-0 lead. Following this, the Explorers would score 10 unanswered, as Hammer would be lights out for the rest of the appearance. The offense was kickstarted by a Jack Cuccinata leadoff home run, and then the floodgates opened. Ryan Guckin, Tatum Levins, junior Nick DeVitro, and Will Binder all entered the RBI column in this one. The Hornets would add 3 of their own in the 6th and shut down the Explorers in the home half of the inning. However, this game would get called due to daylight, ending in 10-6 victory in 7 innings.
The men's water polo team had a gauntlet of a schedule this past week before welcoming in an Atlantic 10 foe. First up was a doubleheader against number 10 ranked Bucknell and then number 9 ranked Navy. The teams were locked at 3-all at the conclusion of the first quarter. In the second frame, Bucknell outscored LaSalle 2-0 to take a slim advantage into the half. The Bison inched away out of the break with a 2-1 third period. The teams were deadlocked at 2-2 in the fourth, securing Bucknell's victory. Junior Tyler Williams and sophomore Colin Schmiller each led the team in goals with 2. Then, against Navy, the midshipmen jumped out to a 4-1 lead in their first and never looked back. Navy also claimed the second quarter 5-3 to go into the intermission with a 9-4 lead. That advantage only swelled out of the half, with Navy outscoring LaSalle 7-2 in the ensuing quarter. The Explorers were down by 10 entering the fourth and could not mount a comeback. The scoreboard was led by the 4 seniors of the Explorers, Colin Strawson, Ash Lynn, Daniel DeMotor, and Carl Miller.
Then the Explorers would travel to Indianapolis, Maryland to take on George Washington. George Washington started the stronger of the sides with a 3-1 first quarter. LaSalle rebounded in the second frame with a 3-2 edge and closed the gap to 5-4 at the half. The teams paired back and forth, and third with the Colonials slightly outscoring the Explorers 3-2, and then entered the final quarter with a 2-goal advantage. The blue and gold tied the game in the fourth quarter, but George Washington scored with 2:25 remaining to claim the game. Freshman Velchko Kodorica headlined for the freshmen as Ash Lynn and DeMotor both tallied a brace.
Whew! A lot of games there.
You could say that again.
But, we have to talk about baseball. They're finally getting their season underway. Tatum Levens, Jack Cuccinata, no surprise that those guys are coming out of the gate strong with hitting, but Frank Ellisalt on the mound definitely doing well. So even though they kind of went half and half with the games, I think that we're in for an exciting baseball season.
Absolutely. I mean, the numbers just pop off the chart, as they always do, it seems to be with this offense. I mean, getting out of a leadoff hitter, Jack Cuccinata, the towering shot in that Delaware State game to get in the home run column. But anytime your leadoff batter who could play a solid center field could have an OPS starting with a 1, is just out of this world. Tatum Levens in 18 at-bats has really been able to put the ball in play. Only a 278 average, but they've always been with runners in scoring position, as it seems, as he already has 6 RBIs on the season. And just all those kind of names at the top of the leaderboard as well, but also guys like Will Binder coming in and going to a tough, hot corner, especially here playing it at Hank Dimension Field all 5 of these games. Being able to hold that down as a freshman is so important and so big for the culture of this team.
Exactly. And, they played a lot of double headers. They were playing Hofstra most of the time. So, you got to give them credit for handling all those games in such a short amount of time and still performing and getting the runs that they did. Exactly.
And you also got to give a lot of credit to most of the starting pitchers that you see from here. Usually what we see here in a baseball season is you have your 2 to 3 starters. It's all you really need for those weekend series. Since there's going to be so many back-to-backs, there's going to be so many doubleheaders and such a weird schedule this year, having people like both Ellisalt and Nick Hammer, both got their first collegiate starts and got hung out there a little bit longer than they'd like, but they realized that the coaching staff just needs innings pitched out of these guys.
Yeah.
And the ability to do that and do it well and to kind of take the ERA going up on your sleeve and wear your heart on your chest like that is just really big to see out of the young freshmen.
Yeah, baseball's been doing great. Naturally, I have to geek out over soccer because they did well this season too. The men's comeback over Mount St. Mary's with the 3 freshman goals, I mean, that's just amazing to see. They had all these freshmen coming in, and now they're starting to get on the score sheet. They're starting to really show what they can do, which is absolutely huge for the team. So very excited about all the debutantes that got their goals.
Exactly, and you just it's about time that they put their money where their mouth is. They were just such a highly regarded class coming into this, and it was all about the recruiting for these guys. And they come in and show what they're all about, and they show that they're not too afraid at the moment. Because just as we've seen just last week, we had Sam DeCencio on. He was leading the points total on the season. Now it's completely shifted, and it's a lot of new faces, and it's a lot of fun to see.
Exactly. And then the women showing their defensive prowess. They only got the 1 goal on the penalty kick, but a shutout is very important to get because it shows that their defense is on point. And, they say offense wins you game, but defense wins you titles. And so with defense like that and shutouts like that, we could see the women go on quite the tear in the A-10 this season.
And I wouldn't be surprised if they do it well. I mean, we're going to talk a little bit more about women's soccer coming up, but they've gone for both DeSantis and Stallard in goal in the 3 games together. They've scored 14 goals offensively for the Explorers, and they've only had to face 11 shots. That's just unbelievable to this mark. Obviously, a lot of it comes with that Delaware State game, but we have a lot of players to get to when we get to that later.
Yeah.
Well, the other sport I want to talk about that involves a goal is women's lacrosse.
Yeah.
It was fun. I was glad to be on the call for this one, actually. And the best thing about it is for all these other teams, like when we talked about men's soccer or women's soccer at the same time, they're being led by these underclassmen, and that's always great to see. But women's lacrosse, it is just exactly who you thought last year. Bridget Rusky comes in, leads the game in goals. Coming around is Anina Akabuchi, who does the same thing on both sides of the field. Maddie Dahowski getting it done once again, kind of starting and igniting this offense. And the only goals that they gave up were all off repositioned shots.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, with women's lacrosse, it's so exciting to see them come out with such a great lead, 7-4, that's nothing to slouch at. Mm-hmm. And even though it is the names you expect in the women's lacrosse team, obviously that's not a bad thing. We love that experience, we love that leadership. So it's going to set a good example, and hopefully that can inspire the freshmen to start, scoring goals of their own and just having everyone be able to get that offensive chance. But a great start to the women's lacrosse season and great start to all the spring sports so far.
Exactly. And the only ones I kind of feel bad for, men's water polo was off to a phenomenal start, as we said last season. Mm-hmm. Having to face off against the number 10 ranked team in the nation. Yeah. And then, let's get a snack and you get a little bit of a break. Come back out and play the number 9 team in the nation. That is just shows a lot of character out of this team to be able to go in there and to play some very solid water polo. And it was just great to see all those 3 games.
Exactly. The seniors were good. They fought as hard as they could. But when you have that many games in such a short amount of time against such good teams, you can only hope for so much. Mm-hmm. But that's it for recaps. And when we come back, we'll come on SportsLine correspondent Sam Long.
You watch. You shouldn't be watching this. You should be watching LaSalle TV. Hey, watch LaSalle TV. You watch.
Man, Keegan is taking this you watch thing way too seriously.
You watch LaSalle TV.
Welcome back. SportsLine correspondent Sam Long is about to give you the Explorer report. Sam, give it to us.
Thanks, Tyler. Women's soccer continues its undefeated season as it opens up an A-10 game against UMass. Leading the team so far offensively are the freshman duo of Caitlin Donovan and Kelly McGrody. They each have 3 goals on the season, with a total of 7 points. In the net, the goalie duo of Jordan Stallard and Jillian DeSantis have kept up LaSalle's clean sheet through 3 games. On the opposing side is UMass. The Minutewomen have split their first 2 games, losing 1-0 to St. John's and winning a match against Stony Brook. It's really hard to see the Explorers dropping this game as they continue their dominant performance thus far. That has led to a 14-plus goal differential.
Really thank you for that, Sam. I can't wait to pick your brain on some of this stuff because I want to start with how great the goalies have been. I mean, we're going to talk about the defense overall to start, but just the ability to have both DeSantis step in after Stallard just pitches 2 shutouts right away, only facing 11 shots like I mentioned earlier. It is not an easy feat once you see your loss of Claudia Jenkins opting out of the season.
Yeah, and having multiple good, reliable goalkeepers is a pretty rare thing to see in soccer. You usually have your number 1, and then you have your less good number 2. But with the women's team, we're seeing 2 very capable goalies. Both have recorded shutouts on the season, which is amazing. It's not just, oh, they've let in a couple of goals. They have proven that they can let in absolutely no goals and stop all the shots that they face. And that is really going to put the Explorers ahead, having that defensive advantage in their games.
Exactly. But the players you got to kind of give almost all the credit to. I mean, 11 saves on net. I mean, you're obviously going to give the credit to the goaltenders there. But there have been so many opportunities, so many corner kicks, so many centered passes that have been blocked by players like Soriano, like Gargiulo, like Gonchevsky, players like that, and especially Leah Giles, who has really been able to push the tempo. She is always the one coming in there for either free position shots or corner kicks, and just being able to move the ball up and just create basically a wall, because they haven't even been able to get shots on, even for the inaccuracy of the opposing team.
And they have a very strong midfield too, which is something that I want to talk about, because you have a good defense, you have a good offense, but that midfield is really what connects the two and really helps bring a good balance to the team. So when you have that strong midfield, you can feed passes to Caitlin Donovan, Kelly McGroarty. It gives the chance for players to, tack up those assists and get in those goals. So the fact that they have players who can kind of play both sides and create that really strong midfield, that's also going to be something that the women's team is going to use to their advantage.
And then when we kind of shift to it offensively, Sam, I'm going to come to you with this one. Just, you see both Caitlin Donovan and you see Kelly McGroarty, and you know the things that could come with a freshman goal leader on the season, let alone two of them. And we actually had a chance to interview them, and the first two games, McGroarty were getting the start, and then Donovan came in for the third start, and you really saw no loss of symmetry. They were just completely the same out there in all the right ways. What do you think that says about just freshmen coming into this crazy season?
I think it says we have an exciting 4 years ahead of us. I mean, you take a freshman in there and have them leading goals as it is coming into an already existing squad. It's only looking more promising for the future. Seeing as this team is already just on an undefeated record, it's only going to get better as the years go by.
And Sam, I also wanted to ask you who you think are really going to be the big standout players this season, because we already have a good idea of who's been doing well so far, but what is your opinion on who's really going to end up being the big players this season?
We touched on this already, just the duo of goalies. It's just great to have two goalies that are just playing phenomenally at once. Like you said already, most goalies or most teams have one goalie that they look to and have a solid number two, but just being able to switch out two stellar goalies in net, you can rest them up, keep their energy up, and they're going to perform just the same. That's something that you don't see on many teams, and that's really what makes this LaSalle team special this year.
100% right, and it's almost like I'm looking at my sheet here, and I just want to make sure I give credit to everyone, because Amira Lokitis just came back, and she is a senior leader now, and she comes back with a hat trick in the Delaware State game. We see Maddie McCready, a freshman, set the record, tying the record, I should say, for assists in a game. Like, all these players have really come. Like, Van Winkler has 2 goals on the season. Like, there are just numbers and productivity that you really don't see in a normal season, let alone 3 games in.
3 games in, they're setting records. They're, setting a precedent for teams that come after them, and they're really just raising the bar every single game. And it's kind of hard seeing how they might outdo themselves, and then the next week they end up outdoing themselves again. So, it's really going to be amazing to see just how well they can do and how high they can reach, and hopefully that, culminates in a championship.
Yeah, we certainly have our reasonings and opinions of what we think is going to come from this UMass game, so I'm going to start with my pick. I think that the Explorers are going to win this one 2-0. I think that the shutout streak is going to continue throughout, and I think that whoever you throw in there, Stoller, DeSantis, heck, behind this defense, even I could put up a shutout. So I think the Explorers are going to continue to roll.
I definitely agree that LaSalle is going to win. I'm going to say 3-1 just because, shutouts, it's great, but I don't want to put too much pressure on the goalie, so I'm going to say 3-1.
See, I carry a certain jinx with me where teams I like end up losing, so I'm going to take UMass 2-1 on this one.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate hopefully the good fortunes that should be coming for the Explorers. It's definitely going to be a tough battle between them. It's just always been a scrappy battle, regardless whenever they start A-10 play, but especially there's a lot of history between the UMass Minutewomen coming to the Explorers.
Exactly. We're in for a very exciting game, and can't wait to see what the result's going to be. But that just about wraps it up for us this week. If you can't make it out to see the Explorer Report, be sure to tune in next week for our coverage. Keep up with this weekend's other sporting events by visiting goexplorers.com or check out this week's edition of The Collegian.
Also, check us out at Facebook at facebook.com/LaSalleTV and on Twitter at SportsLineLTV. We welcome you to send your thoughts and suggestions there. This week's poll is, who is the true GOAT of LaSalle sports? Tom Gola or Hank DeVincent?
I don't know, but for Sam and our entire SportsLine team, I'm Siobhan Nolan.
I'm Tyler Small. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you at the game.